And we are live. Welcome back, everybody, to Virtual Design Master. And once again, we have a great field in front of us. And today is a big one because today we celebrate challenge number 2. Now, for those folks who've been keeping up with Virtual Design Master, of course, we've had a great field of folks who've been joining us. We've gone through our initial design challenges, and we've gotten to the point where we've done our first live defenses. We've taken that away, and we've gotten into some interesting areas of design around resiliency, business continuity, and protection and security. Now, of course, it would be no good if we didn't thank all the folks that make Virtual Design Master happen. So, of course, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Eric Wright. I'm otherwise known as @DiscoPosse on Twitter. I'm one of the co-creators for Virtual Design Master. Of course, I'm joined by the rest of my creative team here. We have Melissa. Give a shout out to the folks there. We have Angelo. We have got a few Angelos a moment ago. That's a funny inside baseball story, but today we're down to just one now. And of course, on our judges side, because we have a great panel of judges who are VCDX and a good set of folks who've been prominent in our community for many years. Rebecca Fitzhugh, thank you, Rebecca, again for your support, and Lior Comrade. So Lior, one of these, hopefully I'm going to get that right if I say it and pronounce it correctly.
Never.
There you go. We normally have Byron Schaller joining us. Byron, unfortunately, is in the air tonight. So much like Phil Collins, he cannot be here, but we will be defending on his behalf. We've got some questions that may hit the field. And of course, you know, not only do we have great judges and great supporters in the creative team, but we have great sponsors who make this happen. It's very important because they both provide, supports with social media and making sure to do outreach and get good folks involved, but also to make sure that we provide prizes to make this all sort of worthwhile. Not only do you get great learning experiences, but there's some good prizes at the end. We really have been very proud of the growth we've seen over 5 seasons now. And this year's premier sponsor, leading out our grand prize, is going to be Round Tower Technologies. Round Tower is a great community supporter, and they've been really strong as making sure that VDM is a part of their process, with some of the folks internally there being previous participants and current judges. Also, our hosting sponsor this year is Packet.net. We're very proud to bring Packet.net as the first year sponsor as our hosting challenge. So this is going to be very exciting as we start to build out towards our big grand finale. We also like to welcome Revello Systems. So Revello is a longtime friend of the vExpert and virtual community. So they've come up and they've provided another prize pack for us, as well as being able to give access to the Revello environment for some of our competitors. Not only do we have judges, but they're also community supporters. So both Byron and Rebecca are very happily supporting prize packs towards our winners as well. We have an anonymous community contributor who's now a 2-time community contributor. And I'm going to give a little hint, perhaps it's somebody that we know from Virtual Design Master history. So we're very proud of the folks that do tend to go through the experience and they share back immediately. Also, James Brown, previous competitor and second-year supporter with the Judge's Choice Prize Pack. So we're going to choose somebody who doesn't necessarily make it through to the final 3, but they will have put an interesting approach to their design. Frank Denneman is providing 10 copies of the vSphere 6.5 Host Resources Deep Dive book. We gave 2 copies away in our first episode, and we've got 2 more copies to give away in our live event today. So make sure you tweet out something saying #VirtualDesignMaster @HostDeepDive. I would love to get the Host Deep Dive book. Share that with your friends and all the folks that are on here today. I'd encourage you to share that with your Twitter streams. Jason Langer, also now a 5-time supporter of Virtual Design Master. Thank you again, Jason. And TVP Strategy, so Edward Haletke, previous judge in our last season, supporting our security side, also providing some coaching for a lot of our folks throughout the years. They're providing silver membership to the TVP Strategy website for our final 3 competitors. And also, previous competitor, Paul Woodward Jr. Paul Woodward is a great supporter of the virtual community in general. If you know him from, if you've gone to the Wisconsin VMUG, hopefully you've been lucky enough to meet him there. Paul's a great, he has a great podcast as well. So Paul is providing some prize packs for a couple of our competitors through the next couple of challenges. So we're very proud of that. Whew, all right. I tell you, the list gets long, and it's impressive to see how this community has really grown and develops. And I would encourage you to go to our participants page, make sure you get introduced and get connected with all the participants on Twitter. And of course, our judges are on the judges page. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Angelo, and we are going to get into the defenses of our previous challenge. So Angelo, take it away.
Thanks, Eric. Good to see everyone today. I kind of get the sense, just quickly browsing, everyone looks a little more, I'd say, kind of relaxed versus the last week where everyone looked a little stiff. So I'm glad to see that. So with that, we're going to start with Kyle. How you doing, Kyle?
You're forgetting the mascot.
Oh, again, I forgot the mascot. You know, there's this thing
fired,
we do.
Andrew. You're fired.
I have a tendency to forget. So,
all right. So this week, so this week is dedicated to Rebecca. She always needs to remember that she's Leonardo and I'm Splinter. Yeah.
Bad out of my sensei.
All right.
That's the big reveal. So that's good. Great.
We're good.
Hopefully next week I can do it right.
Hopefully.
So you know what? I'm going to change it up. I know I had Kyle. I'm going to play some mind games with I had Kyle all prepped, ready to go. He probably had his 45-second speech already. But I'm going to change it up. I think I'm going to go with Anthony. Anthony, how you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Good.
Doing all right.
Good. So let's get right into this. So you have 45 seconds starting now.
Sounds good. So Eat Brains comes to town. We had a virus get into our system somehow. And part of our goal was to figure out where it came in and steps for remediation, and then maybe implement some changes on the back end. Mine was able to, analyze the situation. I found out we needed some more logging. So first thing we did was implement some logging. We got the sites disconnected from each other, and then began kind of the cleanup repair process of it. Little bit of troubleshooting with our backups. We had to make some backup design changes because the previous design was terrible. And so we made some changes to that.
Time is up, Anthony. Good stuff. Good job.
All right.
Good job. Lior, any comments for Anthony?
Yeah. Hi, Anthony. All right. So you mentioned the logging part. So I'm trying to understand. So the logs are being sent over the WAN, right?
The logs are being sent locally to each site has its own logging cluster. So the logs are being stored locally to each site, with each site being operationally independent from the other.
So which protocol did you use for syslog and why?
Protocol for syslog would be dependent on the product. I think that's what you're getting at. We use vRealize to collect all of the different logs. Go ahead.
It's actually, so you have two options basically. So you have TCP and you have UDP. So what is it going to be?
I like TCP a little bit better than UDP. UDP has a little less overhead, so that's a little bit nicer, but there's no acknowledgement that you got it. So.
All right, cool. All right, so second question is around your recovery plan. And so for me, it was a bit missing around the details and around the edges. So let's try to demystify it a bit. Did you incorporate any automated procedures into that plan? Can you walk me through it?
I did not have any automation in the recovery plan. So the recovery plan first consisted of getting the sites isolated from each other so that it couldn't spread, inoculating the endpoints, cleaning up the network, so then finally we could recover over the network from the backups on the other sites was the overall big picture. But I did not plan for any automation.
All right. Thanks, Anthony.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Rebecca, any comments for Anthony?
Yeah, so at the start, I like that you're still pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. That was definitely noted. So my first question is, how are you spend a lot of time talking about protecting the configuration for UCS, but I didn't get the warm and fuzzy for OpenStack workloads. So how are you protecting your OpenStack workloads?
So the OpenStack workloads, in the initial design, we were using a built-in OpenStack structure to do backups of the volumes for OpenStack. So we're using that same process to do the restoring.
Okay, so you're backing up off of storage?
That's correct.
What are you using to back up off of storage?
To the best of my understanding.
What are you using to back up storage then?
So it's a product I'm not terribly familiar with in depth. The product is doing volume, from my understanding anyway, it does volume level snapshots on the actual storage and then can replicate those snapshots and pieces to storage on the other end.
Okay, and are you planning to replicate that to the other end?
In my initial design, I had the backups only going to remote sites, which is one of the things that I needed to change, that we need to have local copies as well.
So then did you change it?
I did change it.
Okay, so you have local and offsite copies of your backups?
That is correct.
So you mentioned you don't have you don't have any automated processes, but do you have a plan in place to actually validate whether your backups are usable or not?
I do not at this point.
Okay, so in essence, you don't really have a full recovery plan then, right? Because we mentioned that it's ransomware. So what's stopping ransomware from infecting not only your storage, but also your replicated as a part of the backup somewhere else? How do you even know that those backups are immutable?
That's a very good point. I don't.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, Anthony. You're off the hot seat.
Thank you.
Great. Kyle.
Yes.
We're actually going to go to Chris.
Ouch. Ouch.
And Chris, before we get into it, I noticed that you had written a blog post today about Cloud Foundry, and sort of, if I can recall correctly, sort of you're getting outside your comfort zone, partly to do with VDM and the challenge, and you're thinking you want to just give folks a quick summary of your blog post and maybe encourage folks to check it out.
Yeah, so you can find my blog on uprightvinyl.co.uk. And so Cloud Foundry is something I wanted to look at for a while now and just haven't sort of had a chance to do. So I'm trying to use the VDM as an opportunity to look at that. And just having submitted the design and having looked at sort of the documentation and stuff, the last day or so I've sort of spent trying to spin up Cloud Foundry just so I can maybe actually talk about how it works, because as of about a week ago, I had no knowledge of it whatsoever. So there's 2 blog posts on there. One is about just spinning up it locally on your machine. So it uses VirtualBox, but it kind of automates all of that for you. And then the second post is about sort of deploying the first app and walking through that. So it kind of uses Pivotal have got their own walkthrough, but I think there's a couple of steps that they kind of gloss over, or there's some assumptions made. So I've kind of made it as simple as possible. It's kind of aimed at Windows as well. So yeah, go and check it out.
Yeah, great to see that as part of the, participating in VDM, that folks are also starting to, or maybe getting back into blogging. So that's great. So good to see. So with that, you have 45 seconds starting now.
Yeah, so as I didn't have an application stack in my challenge 1 design, I needed to create one so as to complete this challenge. As I just talked about, I wanted to use some tools that abstracted away from the infrastructure as much as possible, which meant I had to jump in at the deep end and design my stack using some very unfamiliar services. I went with AWS IoT Suite to handle the army of robots, and with Cloud Foundry and MongoDB to support the Humanity Link app. The security part of my design I approached with 3 scenarios, with the worst being the entire loss of AWS. Using Cloud Foundry allowed me to treat instances of the application as disposable. So if the virus attacked a site, instances in that site could be killed automatically and spun up elsewhere, kind of like the pets versus cattle scenario. So I can just kill the cattle and start up again.
And your time is up, Chris. Thank you. Good stuff. Good job. Rebecca, any comments for Chris?
Yeah, so to start, I'd say good job of trying to use conceptual, logical, physical. So it wasn't perfect, but practice makes perfect, right? So it was definitely, I appreciated that. I also really appreciated you describing the application and the failover mechanism. So thank you. That was very helpful for me understanding how you are protecting your workload. So I'd like to talk about MongoDB for a second. Melissa, stop laughing. She knew this was coming as soon as you said MongoDB. So I see that you're using MongoDB replication. You have replica sets. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you also using the sharding functionality?
So in this design, I'm not using sharding, but the idea would be if I needed to scale, then I would use sharding. And then if I needed to use sharding, then I'd have to use replica sets to protect each shard.
Right. Okay. So as of right now, the reason you chose to not do sharding was simply you didn't need that scale functionality?
It was probably limited time and understanding. I've probably what I just said in a sentence is all I know about MongoDB and sharding. So I thought that if I need to scale, I could do that potentially. But yeah, I left it out just for the time being.
Okay. So for your AWS workloads, how are you protecting those? Right. So you talk about the replication for MongoDB. So, right, but what about the web front end and your other workloads?
So that's all being handled by Cloud Foundry. So if they fail, then the processes with Cloud Foundry will recognize that and then spin the instances back up again.
So you're using more of an active-active approach, and you basically planning to not have to recover because you're doing more business continuity.
Yeah, exactly. So the recovery would be between regions, but within a region that would be spread across multiple availability zones. So the manifests deploying the apps and Cloud Foundry would be deployed across multiple availability zones. The manifest would look to deploy at least 3 instances. So if one instance failed, then the Cloud Foundry would see that and then spin up a replacement instance. And then across region failover was using Route 53 and their failover record sets to failover between regions. So there'd be a secondary Cloud Foundry instance. And that design somewhat was based on there's a reference or there's a discussion from the guys who did Comic Relief in the UK and how they deal with multiple region failures.
Okay. Great. Again, I love the humor throughout your document. So I do appreciate that. And thank you for the links as always, because as soon as you made the V comment, I was like, And then I read it and you proved me wrong once again. So my last question here is about your drone carrier. Did you validate that those runways are going to be long enough for the drones to take off and safely land?
No, I ran out of time to go and find an aircraft carrier and some drones and try and launch them.
All right, thank you.
I presume because I can see people fire drones off in the park that there'd be enough room on an aircraft carrier to launch one.
Right. So I mean, but it depends on what type of drone, right? Because you have all kinds of unmanned aircraft, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Rebecca. Lior, comments for Chris?
Yeah. So first of all, Chris, I think you showed good progress. I like the fact that you took the feedback around the application, which was very important, and try to minimize the gap, so to speak. And I like the fact that you don't take yourself too seriously, which is good for every architect. So I do have a couple of questions. The first one is around the file share. So given the destructive nature of EatBrains, how come you didn't use Amazon EFS? Like, what was the reason behind that?
So I was, my sort of assumption on my design was based around the scientists using Windows machines and using SMB, and EFS doesn't support SMB.
All right. How come you didn't consider changing the protocol if SMB was so exposed to the EatBrain?
I could have done. I think I wanted to put something in my design that allowed EatBrains to get into the infrastructure. So I had a scenario to talk through. And then I guess the presumption would be that the scientist software that they were using runs only on Windows, and or they were using Excel and things like that. So they'd need an SMB share because it's easier to lock down an SMB share. I guess that part of my design was sort of the weakest part. So it's kind of fairly basically laid out.
All right, so just a comment, just document those kind of assumptions, because I'm starting with that. All right, let's talk IoT for a second. So is that the first time you're dealing with Greengrass?
Yes.
All right, great. So that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I want to know is, what is the security policy and methodologies that you use around the tunnel between AWS and your Raspberry Pis?
So the Raspberry Pis, so the assumption was the Raspberry Pis would go out with that company of robots and then come back to the ship, and then they would be plugged in to the ship's network, and then they would upload that. So that would be on that local network within the aircraft carrier.
All right. So that local network, how do you plan to secure it in a way that EatBrains 2.0 will not affect those kind of devices? Because viruses are evolving.
Yeah, I guess I don't know how I'd secure that. I guess I could put some kind of network devices to alert on those kind of things getting in. I also kind of was treating my drones as disposable. So I guess if some of them were infected, then we would just get rid of some of the others. Although because they'd be programmed to go back to the ship, I guess we wouldn't be able to stop them all coming back and getting infected. So yeah, I guess with the brains piece evolving, there is a vulnerability there.
All right, good job overall.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Lior. Good job, Chris. We're going to hop over to Adam. How are you, Adam?
I'm good.
Are you standing this time again? Last week
I'm seated as to avoid this part.
Okay, good stuff. So let me just get the clock ready here, and you have 45 seconds starting now.
So my intent with how an otherwise well-configured environment can be vulnerable without things like ongoing configuration review and change management. So in light of that, an infected administrative workstation at a branch was able to infect the application tier of both of my environments as a result of a missing network access list, and security groups between servers in the application tier. So my remediation plan focuses on correcting those issues, implementing centralized logging and IDS to help with visibility. But really the key piece is implementing those processes to prevent this kind of thing from happening again.
Good job. 41 seconds. Great. Lior, comments or questions for Adam?
Yeah. So Adam, again, good job. I noticed few things that I wanted to try to demystify with you. It's going to sound like 3 questions, but it's actually 2. So first of all, your application has a lot of moving parts, which is okay. I'm great with that. No biggie. But you mentioned that you are focusing on the change control procedures, right? You mentioned that you are focusing on the human side of things. Is that correct?
As part of the resolution plan, yes.
Yeah. Yes. So what kind of automation, non-human change control methodologies and tools would you use?
Something like a configuration management database?
No, I'm not trying to put my finger on a specific product or a feature. Like okay. In terms of what are the different components within the within the non-human but automation stack would you use?
I guess I would to, like I said, a configuration management system, a code repository and versioning for technical items that required adjustment. Things that would help with auditing that type of configuration would be AWS config would alert us to some of these changes. So there are many tools on the non-human types of audits and maintaining alignment with the intended configuration.
All right. So how come you didn't put any of those in your design this time?
Because I think the tendency would be to go directly toward that technical solution, and I really wanted to emphasize the people aspect of it. Someone take ownership of this and be responsible for these audits, and at least initially will lay the groundwork for that type of development. So that would really come in as a phase two. I believe I mentioned in the recurring configuration review section that many of these tasks would be candidates for your point, but I just really wanted to focus on getting that initial process in first.
All right. So second question, there will come a time when, when security patch will have to be installed. With your current solution, you chose to go with cleaning up the AMI images and then redeploying. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. So what would be the process in case you don't have that kind of luxury? What will be the process around the patching process? How would you consider updating your application on the different tiers with your design?
I would likely have to create a validated patch repository somewhere internally on the network that only contains those validated packages without altering the routing and other structures I have set up on the network. So that is an omission, but that is how I would have approached patching generally.
All right, got it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lior. Rebecca, comments for Adam?
Sure. So my first comment is that I really appreciated your root cause analysis section. I think that helped kind of give some insight into your thought process and your methodology with this. So my first question, though, is it looks like you have a bunch of different monitoring tools and compliance tools. How is that affecting manageability of your design?
Well, I think because we had previously implemented CloudWatch for performance monitoring, it's not much of a burden administratively to extend that functionality to CloudWatch logs. Beyond that, that normal system logging, but I also wanted some IDS functionality there. As a result of the integration between OSSec and CloudWatch logs, I'm actually able to gather locally deposited IDS alerts from each instance and bring those in. So adding that functionality because of those choices, I don't believe adds to the administrative burden from that perspective.
Okay. So correct me if I'm wrong. It looks like your plan is if one of your workloads gets infected, that your plan is to just redeploy the app tiers using a clean image. Is that correct?
In this instance, yes.
Okay. So I guess this is a two-part question. So first part is, does this violate your RPO?
Overall, in this case, because we failed over to DR, I don't think it would, because what we're doing, and we essentially didn't meet RPO in the first place because of the infection. So I think we have all the time we need to repair this environment. But redeployment, if we were tight on time, we could use the original method of restoring from backup. The question then would be, how long did this package and can it be trusted? I believe the redeployment method shows better to management. Hey, we know this image has been audited, it's being deployed fresh, and it has not run on the network with this vulnerable package present.
Okay. So if you are violating your RPO, then aren't you violating your SLA?
The way I drew up the scenario, we did end up violating the SLA before failover to DR. In line with what Chris said, I had to give myself room to create a scenario here. So as a result of that, I tried to provide a more detailed failover plan so that if a severe situation like this happened in the future, we'd be able to fail over to DR while still meeting our our recovery time objective.
Okay. So our goal for the future is to actually meet the agreement that we signed that said that we would meet that agreement?
Process, yes.
Okay. So with that, you said that you could potentially recover from backup. So can you tell me a little bit about your backup? How often are you backing up? Where are you storing your backups?
The instances themselves are not that valuable. So in the original design, I decided on a daily 24 hours that consists of an automated EBS snapshot facilitated by an external tool. Those snapshots are then transferred to S3, where they're stored after the first. Incrementals will be stored in the same area.
Okay. What external tool are you using?
It's called Cloud. It uses the API to automatically snapshot those EBS volumes.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, Adam. Nigel, welcome.
Hey, guys.
Good to have you. I think we'll go to you because I know you have some. You're in the middle of travel, and we don't want to lose your connection. So let's hop over to you. You have 45 seconds starting now.
Okay, so this part of the design, I was having a lot of trouble, pretty weak with this scenario and this type of security. So. There's my explanation. We're using Cisco ASA firewall with NSX, and the components of NSX, we're using distributed firewalls to check traffic and pass those over through IPS systems and keep our site secure, as well as using some rules for blocking SMB ports and monitoring that traffic. Outside that, I had a hard time trying to figure out the best way to handle this, so I'm sure we can talk about that with some questions. So go for it.
Your time's up. Great. Good stuff. Thanks, Nigel. Rebecca, comments for Nigel?
Yeah. So my first question is, which airport are you at? Which one? Hobby?
Yeah.
So you fly Southwest. Do you really want to broadcast that to the world?
Hey, at least I don't get punched in the face.
I'm Premier 1K. I'm not getting punched in the face on any United flight.
You have status, military, you know.
So you, and I quote, say that the goal of NSX in your design is to help create a zero trust network security outcome by allowing only the necessary network communications between data center systems to reduce any surface area attack. End quote. Yes. How could you have done this without NSX?
How could I have done that without NSX?
That's correct. How can you create a zero trust network without NSX?
I'm sure that I can use some firewall ruling, but I am very lack in this situation. So I honestly, I'm having a hard time even grasping what the best thing to do besides firewalls. And I know that's a lame answer, but outside of that, regular protection of any other environment would be locking down ports and so forth. But
okay, well, I'm glad that you mentioned locking down ports because you specifically mentioned that you're blocking ports 80 on Linux, 25, 143, 110, and 21. So you list the ports that you're blocking, but you didn't give any justification as to why you're blocking those ports. So can you tell me why you specifically chose those?
I took those as popular ports that I had briefly discovered, or not just recently discovered, but just looked through to see best ports to block, especially SMTP traffic. Going outward, the 80, obviously want to make sure that we're doing 443 for some type of security there. Other than that, it was just a basic, best practice, block these ports, not knowing any other ports that other malicious traffic can run on. I stuck with the basics.
So you used my favorite two words, best practice. Where did this best practice derive?
In my brain, I have best practice.
So this is just a Nigel best practice. Got it. Okay. So my last question here is you mentioned that you're using a 3-2-1 model for backups. So where are your offsite backups located?
Offsite backups are stored at each data center. So we're moving backups to the other data centers. So from one data center, have another backup at the other data center, as well as with the VM Cloud Connect, we're using that for offsite to another provider.
So for your offsite backups, how long are you archiving those for?
I hadn't actually thought of discussing that, so I don't have that in mind. But I would do probably weekly offsites, so we had at least weekly backups. And if we live as far as a year, then we would rotate yearly backups as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Lior, comments for Nigel?
Yeah. Hi, Nigel.
Hey, bud.
Right. So you focused a lot on the infrastructure side of things. Trying to understand how the Humanity Link 2.0 application security model looks like. What kind of actions you took in order to better secure the application level? And what would you do in order for us to make sure that next time EatBrains won't explode our environment?
I think after learning how it came into the system, I would definitely look to lock down those areas of entry, if that was ports or if that was from another system that was compromised. Outside of that, I believe the best practice in my mind, would be to continue to monitor those areas of the network that the traffic goes for Humanity Link, to make sure that we're not seeing anything malicious, and watching that with either the NSX or the firewall that's doing the IPS checking or discovery. So outside of that, I don't have an explanation on the application side.
What would you do in terms of human procedures? What would you have done differently?
In human procedures, can you explain a little bit differently?
So the virus came from somewhere,
Right.
and there are human involved in operating the system, in maintaining it, securing it. What kind of change control kind of procedure would you go with?
Honestly, since we're just starting this Earth again, I'd probably kill everybody, and we'll start fresh, get a set of people in that data center.
That's always legit.
Yeah, we're gonna get DNA testing again. I'm not sure if we had half zombies in there delivering that or not, but I'm gonna start fresh, man. Let's knock them all out and go again.
All right, I like that. All right. So second question I have, I tried to find and I couldn't your RTOs and RPOs. So can you put numbers on that, and how does that correlate with your design? All right.
Unfortunately, I apologize.
Okay.
It's okay. All right. Thanks,
Okay,
Nigel.
thanks, Lior. So we're down to the final two. Mr. Edwards, how are you?
I'm well. Interesting week. But yeah, I'm here. I survived. I got something in. But yeah, glad to be here.
Good to hear. Kyle, we're going to go to you.
Again.
So it's your day, Kyle. I think it's your day. So you have 45 seconds starting now.
Right. So yeah, my approach to the design was taking the original design and looking at more security design around that. So I took the assumption that the virus was infected, but it was under control through existing security measures, and then that kind of initiated a design report around the application and around the application as well, and then followed by some walkthroughs. Really, I mean, they're not very detailed walkthroughs. I put my hands up, but yeah, there was a little bit of a walkthrough how to recover from a virus protection rather than a kind of full DR, really.
Good stuff. 36 seconds. Rebecca, comments for Kyle?
for Nigel Kyle.
Yeah.
So first thing, for the first comment was they did a good job this week. So I think some progress between weeks. It goes for most everybody, and a good job using conceptual, logical, physical. Again, not perfect, but we're getting there. So
yeah, I still haven't put a physical design in either one, to be honest.
Yeah.
I still need to do it.
Well, yeah, and then I think you had some stuff in logical that I was like, that's more physical. But again, like practice makes perfect. So,
okay.
So I noticed your backup solution.
Yeah, I thought you would.
I might be wearing a shirt that says what your backup solution is. I see shoulders, and I might be in the office of your backup solution.
Right.
So, I'd like for you to explain how, well, first, if your backups are, and then how they are immutable.
How they are, how they're stored within the brick, do you mean?
Just simply like, are you familiar with the phrase immutable?
No, I'm assuming what you mean is what I've put in the design in terms of we back up to the brick, and then you obviously correct us if I'm wrong, but that's stored as read only as far as I'm aware. So it's kind of like a so-called air cap, if you like that. It's backed up to the brick, and then it can't be overwritten by whatever Windows server, whatever it is that's talking to it, like you might get with a standard of a backup product.
Correct, right? So once the backups are on the brick, they're not able to be modified, right? So that makes them immutable, which is very good for this instance. Why? Because with ransomware, it can go and can actually get into your backups, right? And then encrypt them, and then you're screwed. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Good. So do you have any offsite backups?
Well, I've kind of, the way I've designed it was there was a kind of brick at every site, so they would talk to each other. So I'd effectively be an offsite backup of each other. I haven't got another tier to somewhere else. I haven't got that, no.
Okay, so you're replicating your backups between bricks across the different sites. Are you using any kind of long-term archival?
Well, I haven't got any kind of archival figures in there. I assume that the new agency, whatever it might be, running the application doesn't really have any kind of governmental regulations. We haven't got a government, so I just kind of thought, well, they'll keep it for whatever they can, I suppose. I haven't really got any figures in there yet.
Okay. So you mentioned that you're using data at rest encryption with vSAN,
yes.
And that you are planning at a certain point to use SSL to protect the data in flight. Is that correct?
On the application, yeah. So the vSAN's for the infrastructure where the humans would use, that Horizon runs on and that sort of stuff. And the protection in transit was for the application on AWS.
Okay, so that's from application to application, or I should say instance of application to instance.
It was for users for across the internet to the application.
Okay.
It wasn't internally, no.
So then do you have any kind of data in flight protection at all, or encryption?
Within the application, no, I haven't.
Okay, what about for just your data itself going to the vSAN?
Well, the vSAN is for the infrastructure rather than the application.
Yeah, we can go back and forth. So you mentioned for the application, right? What about for storage itself?
Well, do you mean for the application or for the, because the way I've designed it, I've tried to keep them separate.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
For the infrastructure side, do you have any data in flight encryption?
No, I haven't. So it's encrypted at rest on the vSAN, and that's it. Yeah, there's nothing in flight.
Okay, and then your communication to the application is not yet protected by SSL, but will?
Yeah, as part of this security design that was suggested to do it.
So it's too late then for the EatBrains attack.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I assumed that it was initially caught on site, and then through that we put the security measures in place and tightened up the AWS stuff and tightened up the infrastructure.
Okay. Would you describe the strategy that you're taking as defense in depth, and why or why not?
Reactive. That was to describe it. Yeah.
So you're reacting, right? You're implementing this new security design as a reaction to EatBrains. So would you consider this defense in depth, and why?
I wouldn't consider it too in depth, I don't think. I've added some things that I would like to deploy. I wouldn't think of it as too in depth. I think it's all about having multiple layers where you can and reducing the attack surface. I wouldn't class it as in depth, no.
Okay. Are you familiar with the term defense in depth?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Rebecca. Lior, comments for Kyle?
Yeah. Hi, Kyle. So this week, improvement award goes to you, Kyle. I think it shows that you try to get out of your comfort zone. For me, that's the most important thing. couple of questions. So you mentioned SSL on the applicative layer, right?
Yes.
All right. What kind of overhead you need to take under consideration when using SSL? What are the most common things you need to design for when switching to SSL?
I wouldn't know, to be honest.
All right. So since this is educational, so you need to look at certificate authority. That's one. Bandwidth increase and CPU load, right? So those are probably, and the SSL round trips, right? What it takes for the SSL round trip to go. So those are the things that are important to look at. My second question is around the AppArmor that you chose to go with in terms of the Docker security profiles.
Yeah, I had a feeling you would mention that, yeah.
Yeah. So my question is, how's the process gonna fly? Like, who is deciding which security profile on the container will be, like, who's gonna establish that? Who's gonna apply it? How do you decide how the profile will look like?
I guess that will be down to the developers to do that as part of the deployment of the application.
So you're giving the developers the freedom to decide how the application security will look like?
Yes, I guess I've assumed that, yeah. So maybe he's introduced some security policies around that and governed by a different team and regulated maybe. But yeah, that's how I've assumed it. Yeah.
All right. Can you give me like an example to one of the security profiles using AppArmor?
No, I couldn't. Sorry.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know what. That's what I've just looked in and kind of dug around and kind of Docker security, and I found a few things around that and started looking at it. Yeah, but I couldn't.
All right. So one of my comments to you, and like I told you, it shows that you try to get out of your comfort zone. But I wish you will get down into the details, because if you're choosing to go with a technology or a stack or a feature, that's great. But try to know as much as possible around that. And when you're using AppArmor, that's a fairly small topic to digest. So just try to go into the details around the edges, okay?
Yeah.
And try not to leave loose ends. All right?
Yeah, I feel.
Good job overall.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I think for that in particular, because the larger pictures around the containers, I really need to get grips with a bit more.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think it would have fit together.
All right.
Good job, Kyle.
Right,
thank you. Mr. Edwards, back to you.
Oh, no.
Yes, you're on deck, my friend. Okay, you have 45 seconds starting now.
Key thing, life happens. It sucks. Get on, move on. The big thing here I've learned is get out of that stack, get out of your comfort zone, start becoming the mythical unicorn of a full stack engineer. My best learning point I've had so far is, start thinking about immutable or throwaway infrastructure. Make your app generic, and automation is key. One thing key to me this week is humans are stupid. Don't forget their education, because they love opening files. Probably the best way of getting crypto. And also, does cloud have a compromise? Do you lose control? If you can't access the network, how do you throw it away? And that's probably over out of time.
Your time is up, my friend. Good work. Lior, comments for Mr. Edwards?
Yeah. So, all right. I'm gonna ask the question, and then I have some comments, Mr. Edwards. So, can you tell me what are with the application design? What are the security checkpoints? Like, where are you securing your application throughout this design?
I'm not very much at the moment. I actually purposely, it's going to sound really stupid, I designed it badly because I wanted a scenario to happen. I I wouldn't have used SMB, done any of the things that I've done because I wanted to create a scenario. That might sound really, really silly, but I started thinking, what I had already built in CryptoGuard lockers and things last week. I thought, well, actually, I've got to do something that's going to cause this to happen. If I had designed the app any other way, I would have probably gone with Apache, PHP, other codes that wouldn't have got a surface attack from SMB. That I just wanted something that I could talk about, really, or kind of, our engineers are stupid this week.
Are you saying you're trying to replace Melissa?
No,
right.
you can never replace Melissa.
Irreplaceable.
Irreplaceable. All right. So let's go into the deployment side of things, because so last time I asked you some questions around Terraform, and I'd like to go down that route again.
Mm-hmm.
So what components will you incorporate in your Terraform plan in terms of security?
I am still incredibly weak on Terraform security because the week I've had, I'm still learning Terraform.
If you will pay attention, the question is not around Terraform. The question is around any automation tool that you might use, whether it's provisioning or change management or configuration management. What kind of features / components would you deploy throughout the plan?
One of the things I try and start looking at, especially if I've got code for whatever automation tool I've got, I want some form of change management on it. I've been doing some look into GitHub, commits, masters, spin-offs, things like that. And, is that something I can start to leverage? So if someone has compromised my code, can I look back at it? Can I stop that from happening? And as things are deploying, other particular rule sets you can roll out. I know it's one of my weaknesses. I really want to get my teeth into it, get some meat on the bone, but I just haven't had a chance yet.
All right. So just a few comments around the design. It shows that you had good intentions, but I had hard times to better understand it from security perspective and also from your DR side of things. There were a lot of stuff that I missed, and I'm not even sure that and it shows in your answer, in terms of the challenge, there were some gaps, what the challenge asked you to do and then what you answer, but it's all good. It's part of the learning curve. So I enjoyed reading it anyway. So yeah, thanks.
Cheers.
Good, thanks, Lior. Rebecca, comments for Mr. Edwards?
Yeah. So how are you planning for disaster recovery if you have no defined RTO and RPO?
I think I kind of placed that in my answers because I'm really, really silly. The one thing I'm really learning now is can everything be disposable? Chris hit on it earlier, is should we just get used to a throwaway infrastructure? If data, our key thing always is going to be data. As long as that data is accessible in some way, shape or form, everything around it, can you just throw it away? Does it matter?
I agree, but I don't see how that answers my question. So even if we're throwing away the entire infrastructure and we have the data available, how are we making sure that data is available? And if we have to recover from that data, how do we make sure that we can recover quick enough? A, and B, with the replication, with the RPO piece of that, how can we ensure that we have the data even available, right? And an appropriate age of data?
That is a really good question. Basically, that comes down to absolute finite detail and planning, and actually asking more questions of your customer. That's one thing I think, again, this week I didn't ask, and I don't think if anyone asked, is actually what is acceptable to the customer. And I know this is something I'm coming a cropper on, hence why my table is a bit of a mess. Started thinking, well, actually, how many calls can I throw at VMware to actually take snapshots? And is that going to start causing me a problem? Am I going to hit a limit? I wanted to try and hit 15 minutes because if this is a life critical application, is 15 minutes even acceptable to our customers or our end users? because actually, how long is a snapshot going to take, and can I run more than one without bringing the VMware platform to its knees?
Well, part of that would be researching how it's even quiescing the virtual machine in the first place, right, for your intended backup solution.
Mm-hmm.
So do you know how your backup solutions, since you have multiple, are actually quiescing those virtual machines?
So this is, again, with I'm a little bit weak on Rubrik because I'm still exploring that. I'm not trying to get any favors, but I was really impressed with the way it took the snapshot away from the VMware infrastructure, gobbled it up. I know we used term immutable earlier, and then just sucked that in a way, completely air gapped, nothing was done. For something like Veeam, I would rely on the nimble snapshotting mechanism. So it goes off, calls the array does a snapshot. You don't get any of this old school hot add disks causing problems in the infrastructure, and it should detract from that.
Okay.
So in theory, I should be able to run a good few at once, but it's kind of, dare I say, practice makes perfect. You've really got to give it a go until you see it fall over. I know running a few jobs at the moment, I could probably snapshot about 15, 20 VMs, depending on my hosts, and things start getting a bit hairy. But again, that comes right back down to our real nitty gritty hardware layer. Have we really thought about that as well?
Okay. So one of the things that I've noticed in your design is you have multiple backup solutions. So two-part question, why do you have multiple backup solutions? And then secondly, how does that affect the manageability of your infrastructure, especially when it comes to recovering from some kind of issue?
Well, I choose to have multiple layers. Just it's massive safety net, really. Because one core technology could fail. What's not saying that the next EatBrains virus could attack one of the communications channels on Rubrik, or could completely scupper Veeam. It might go attack Veeam, config logs. That's its sole purpose, is to make sure your backup infrastructure is on its knees and you can't recover. So why not have more than one tool in your arsenal? It is going to make manageability hard. I'm not going to do a massive ask for a favor here. One thing I loved about Rubrik, it was literally click, set, and forget. I clicked on my cluster and it just magically worked. Whereas with Veeam, it's probably going to take, I'm probably going to have an engineer or two just making sure people are adding things to backup jobs, unless I'm already calling out APIs somewhere to ensure those things are added to the backup jobs so that I can restore them in the future.
So, I mean, maybe I zoned out and checked Twitter, but weren't you the person that started their conversation with "people are stupid"?
Not sure, possibly.
I mean, Lior, was that Gareth, or am I making that up?
I'm not messing with you.
All right. Because if you're saying people are stupid, and then now you're increasing the amount of applications and the complexity of your design and relying on humans to then recover the data, it just doesn't add up to me. So how are you validating that your Rubrik and Veeam backups are even capable of being recovered from?
I probably haven't scratched it at all in this design, but I would hope at some point with Veeam, I'd be using Sure Backup and getting a lovely little report. And it's something that I know I've been chatting with some of the SEs about with Rubrik. Is there's some guys who've done some really fancy cool stuff with PowerShell, but where I don't own a Rubrik, I can't. I don't actually have a Rubrik, so I can't try that. But it is something that I'm trying to read into because, again, it breaks away from being somewhat vendor agnostic. If I can use something like PowerShell, Puppet, Ansible, do I really? I'm then not vendor locked into a certain piece of software to check my backups. Right.
Yeah. So I'm not trying to advocate Rubrik or anything here. I'm just simply asking because there's ways with Veeam as well, right? So I want to make sure that you're thinking about validation of the backups, even, especially with some case like ransomware is what we're discussing this week. So you mentioned that you're also have tape.
Yep.
Where are you storing that tape data?
Well, that is
in the Mojave Desert. Is that where you're storing it?
Well, I've got one place in the Mojave Desert. I'm hoping there's an underground safe. Again, that goes back to the whole physical design. And I was hoping somewhere I could cheat and use some of the robots to actually go change the tapes. I think I might have hinted that in my first design. Because again, it's taking away that human element.
Okay, I like this. I want to run with this. So you say that you're going to have the robots potentially change the tape.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that idea. I think that's a great idea. Now, how are you going to get that tape then off site? Are the robots also going to be doing that?
It's going to sound a really, really odd thing. Where I've already got so many layers, I was thinking if I've got 2 lots of tapes, is there a likelihood of both my sites burning down? A small one, but is it realistically going to happen? I don't think so. I hadn't planned to take the tapes off site because, again, if you want to recover quick and tape as slow as it is, you want that as close to your tape drive as you possibly can.
Okay, so you have no offsite storage of your backups. So you're saying that the backups of Mojave are stored in Mojave, and then your backups in where's the other one? In Wales are stored in Wales.
Yeah, for now.
In the same site.
Yeah, for now.
So there's no natural disaster that's ever happened that affected an entire site in history.
Of course there is, but then again, where I've already got the layers of the rubric and the cohesivity, and they're replicating across. I'm certainly hoping that if one site was to fail, I should be able to rebuild. And if we've got these mythical drones, and God forbid the Mojave burns down, I've got to send tapes. Can I send some tapes on some drones from Wales all the way to wherever I decide to spin up again?
Okay. And then the last question: do you think tape would melt in the Mojave Desert?
I don't know. Again, if I'm underground, should they melt?
I don't know either. I think it's a potential risk. That's all I'm saying.
It is a risk, but I'm thinking if I'm underground and it's nice, it's a nice constant temperature, it's within tolerance of, I believe it's 28.5 degrees without aircon.
That's for tape?
Yeah.
You're throwing out some numbers that I'm going to Google tonight.
I would
28.5 degrees Celsius.
I think it's 28.5. I've got this weird. It's in my first paper in season 4. I called it out. I did some weird reading on it because it was an interesting read for me, a bit like Chris's aircraft carriers. I just went completely off piece. I went, that's interesting. I can't see that being too much of a problem because you guys must have hotter ambient conditions than us in the UK, transferring tapes via, UPS or the mountain guys. Yeah, couriers. So, it's going to happen. They're going to get hotter than 30 degrees.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. All right. Okay, good. I mean, is anyone else sweating after that one? Like, I'm hot.
I just want to say that, I'm a good master splinter.
I just got a DM from Lior that said, have some mercy. So
good stuff. Anyways, everyone, you did great. I'm going to share something, and then Eric, I think we'll switch to Eric, or did you want to talk first, Eric?
Sure, yeah, if you want. So we've got, as you noticed, there's a couple of folks who couldn't attend live. We had Nigel up in the air. We've got Byron up in the air. Nigel was able to land, and as we can see, he's been safely driving home along the way, and of course using his hands free as he should. We do not advocate the use of mobile devices while driving. That's definitely what will end up in Zombieland. Obviously, great lessons, great learnings. The other folks who committed their designs were able to get them in. So we've got them. They're going to be published. They weren't able to defend live. And along with that, we've actually had a couple of folks who are not going to be able to carry on with us. They've had to make the personal decision to remove themselves. So we've got an unfortunate loss. Mujahir, who made it through a very interesting challenge personally in the first episode. He was unable to continue. Tim Smith also unable to carry on. And we have, sorry, I just literally got to go back and check my list. I need to keep track. That's right, of course, and Stalin. Unfortunately, Stalin was overcommitted and unable to. Definitely, it's a sign of the difficulty and challenge that these folks have taken on. So huge kudos to everybody who's continued on with us. And as you do know, we wind down to a small number at the end. So unfortunately, we are not completed for the night. So we do want to thank the folks that did come through all the way to this point with Challenge 2. And quickly, the host deep dive book. We've had two folks that we've picked out of the hat. We're going to give away. So first is Jeremy A or Jeremy I. So thank you, Jeremy, for reaching out on Twitter. I'll reach out to you, get connected on DM, get your address. We'll get you a copy of the book. And also Tim Davis. Tim's a great friend of the community. Tim is going to give away the book to somebody else. So this is a huge part of community. So it may be slightly read by the time it gets to the second recipient, but it's all good. So thanks to Tim for sharing and being a part of our social committee who continues to drive Virtual Design Master. And with that, I will pass back to Angelo, and we will talk about who, unfortunately, is not going to be able to carry on as we head in to challenge number 3.
Thanks, Eric. Good job, everyone. And this is the moment. Pause. What I have here is an envelope that contains the name of the person that is not advancing. How do I know that? Because it's labeled. This is the envelope that contains the name of the person who is not advancing. Man. So let me go in, get that name out.
Awful.
Yeah.
Huh. That's funny. It's in here somewhere. Wow.
In case you guys didn't realize, Melissa's not the evil one.
I know, right? Everybody's like, "Oh, Melissa, you're so evil." And we have Mr. Suspenso over here. Like,
the power.
It's not a blank piece of paper. There is some writing in the middle. So the person that will not be advancing is Dale. Dale, I don't think was able to make it tonight, but Dale will not be advancing to the next round. So congratulations, everybody. A lot of good feedback from the judges here. I hope you take it to heart, not as criticism, but as observations and ways to improve your design docs for the next round. So with that, I'll ask Melissa to share what's up next for next week.
so how's everybody doing tonight? Yeah. I don't think the last challenge was that bad, right? Wasn't that bad. Maybe made you look at something a little different, think of things a different way. Hopefully in real life, you guys didn't have to deal with anything like that anytime recently. I know people who have. Not very fun. I personally fixed some of my Windows labs by formatting them and turning them into ESXi hosts. Took care of it for me. I didn't have to worry. But that's neither here nor there.
Oh my gosh, you're so suspenseful too.
I know, right? It's like catching from Angelo. Fine, Rebecca.
Yeah.
I couldn't help it after Angelo's long, drawn out.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry
about that.
Anyway.
Melissa, Leonardo is watching.
Leonardo's watching. Leonardo wants to know what his third challenge is. So the designs you've been working on throughout the first 2 challenges of this season have proven to solve many of the issues faced by the Humanity recovery teams. We now have 3 sites running in the Humanity Link software, and they've been secured. However, 3 sites will not be enough for long as we begin to take more and more of the Earth back. Some of the future sites slated for deployment have not yet been declared zombie-free zones and are still considered very dangerous. In addition, there are additional sites off Earth being looked at for deployment. It's not always feasible to send a human team in to perform an infrastructure deployment for these reasons, as well as many others. We're also very, very short-staffed, and Gareth and people are stupid, so that too. So the ability to perform centralized remote operations is also desired. Being able to deploy and manage the infrastructure and application in this manner is the next goal. You must design an environment to provision and manage your infrastructure. Hint, hint, hint. You may want to use open source products, but this is not a requirement or a constraint. The design must include currently available products. It cannot utilize non-released software or features. Choose and document how you will deploy and manage your infrastructure from the initial provisioning through the continuous configuration management. Your submission must also include operations procedures for managing version control for your infrastructure and code. Every layer of your infrastructure from the cloud and virtualization layer up to the application must be included. Practical walkthroughs and example code are valuable add-ons to your design document. Now we need to do a little bit of what, Lior? What?
I'm smiling. I'm
Leonardo's
smiling.
not happy with me right now?
I'm smiling. Come on.
You just described all of Lior's favorite things.
Did I really?
Is open source one word or two words?
It's actually 3.
3.
Right now, everybody's looking at their hand, looking down. They're saying it's 1. Definitely, this is going to be a challenge. We've seen a lot of folks explore some exciting new technologies. As Melissa mentioned, we've gone in some interesting directions. This is going to be. We can see we're honing some skills. We try not to give away how things are going to go. You'll notice the general progression that Virtual Design Master follows. So it's not out of the woodwork. But again, everybody that's come to this point has done great designs. Everybody can learn from the content that's been posted. We've actually just published both the challenge and all the designs that led up to this point. So congratulations to everybody who's moving forward into challenge number 3. We're sorry to see the folks that can't continue on. Dale did a great job, but there were some challenges with the design. So of course we can hand direct feedback to all the folks here. And thank you to everybody for continuing to maintain the social side of things. It helps us to keep Virtual Design Master in front of a lot more new bodies and new folks. And it keeps that Eat Brains virus away, I think. So, Melissa, you think that everybody's ready for this one?
I think so. No, everybody's shaking their head now. Look at what you've accomplished so far. This should be a cakewalk compared to the other stuff.
By the way, I just want to mention that next week I'll be in Vegas, and I'm going to be in a CI/CD sweatshop. So, yeah.
I'll be in Maine next week. So I'll be as far away from you as I can get in the U.S. besides Hawaii.
So everybody seems to be, they're half smiling. They're looking a little worried, but again, bring forward what you know. Look to the community. I would encourage anybody who's on Virtual Design Master watching the hashtag right now, tweet out if you're willing to help out. We've got mentors that are in the community with lots of